Captain Lee Ji-won gripped the command chair as the massive view screen displayed something no human had ever seen before. The galactic wall stretched endlessly in every direction, a shimmering barrier of pure energy that pulsed with ancient power. It looked like a cosmic aurora, with waves of blue and gold light dancing across its surface. For over 3,000 years, this wall had kept every known species trapped in one small corner of the galaxy. "Status report," Ji-won called out, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. Today, humanity would either make history or become it. Chief Engineer Park Min-ho wiped sweat from his forehead as he checked his instruments one last time. The quantum breach drive hummed beneath the ship's deck plates, a piece of technology that had taken Earth's best minds 20 years to develop, while other alien races had spent centuries trying to find the mathematical key to unlock the wall. Humans had taken a different approach. If you can't find the door, make your own. Drive systems are green across the board, Captain, Min-ho reported. All power conduits are stable. The quantum resonators are spinning up to full capacity. He paused, looking at readings that would have terrified most engineers. I still can't believe we're actually doing this. At the science station, Dr. Kim Hana ran her fingers through her hair as she studied the energy patterns flowing across her screens. The wall wasn't just a barrier. It was alive in its own way, responding to their presence like some massive organism. Her calculations showed fracture points where the ancient structure was weakest, spots where a focused quantum burst might crack it open. "The resonance cascade is building perfectly," she announced. "I'm detecting microfractures forming along grid coordinates 7 alpha through 12 delta. If we hit it just right, we can create a temporary gap." Lieutenant Choi Dae-ho adjusted his headset as alien voices chattered through the communications array. Representatives from dozens of species were watching from a safe distance, most of them convinced that the humans were about to destroy themselves. The Zenthari ambassador had actually placed bets on how spectacular their failure would be. "Captain, the Galactic Council observers are requesting we abort the mission," Dae-ho reported with a slight smile. "Ambassador Kelroth says, and I quote, 'The primitive humans will trigger a cascade failure that kills us all.'" Ji-won almost laughed. 3 months ago, when humanity had first proposed this mission, the council chambers had erupted in chaos. The Valdorian scientists had called it suicide. The crystalline collective had declared it mathematically impossible. Even the warlike Kraxan Empire had suggested it was too dangerous to attempt. But humans had always been different. Where other species saw impossible barriers, humanity saw interesting puzzles. Where ancient civilizations accepted limits, humans asked, "What if we just hit it really hard?" "All stations prepare for breach attempt," Ji-won announced shipwide. Throughout the UES Taekwon, her crew made final preparations. In engineering, teams stood ready to manage power surges that could vaporize the ship. In Medical Bay, Dr. Song Hayeri prepared for injuries that might result from exposure to exotic radiation. Even the ship's cook, Kim Young-ho, had secured everything in the galley, knowing that the next few minutes would shake the vessel like nothing in human experience. The Taekwon itself was humanity's finest achievement in space engineering. Built in the orbital shipyards above Mars, it combined cutting-edge human innovation with carefully studied alien technology. Its hull was crafted from metamaterials that could withstand the pressure inside a star. Its engines could push the ship to 90% of light speed. But its most important feature was the quantum breach drive, a weapon disguised as an exploration tool. 60 seconds to breach attempt, Min-ho called out. The drive's whine was getting louder now, building to a crescendo that made the entire ship vibrate. Warning lights flashed as energy levels climbed beyond anything the vessel had ever channeled before. Hana watched her instruments with the intensity of a hawk watching prey. "Energy cascade is forming. I'm seeing quantum fluctuations across the entire barrier surface. It's like the wall knows what we're trying to do." 30 seconds, Min-ho announced. Through the deck plates, everyone could feel the raw power building in the ship's core. The quantum breach drive was essentially a controlled Big Bang, focused into a beam that could punch holes in reality itself. Ji-won looked around her bridge one last time. These were the best people humanity had to offer, scientists, engineers, and explorers who had volunteered for a mission that might kill them all. But they also knew that if they succeeded, they would open up an entire galaxy for human exploration. 10 seconds. Drive is at maximum power. The view screen showed the wall responding to their approach, energy patterns shifting and swirling like a storm preparing to break. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engaging quantum breach drive. The universe exploded into impossible colors. The Taekwon fired a concentrated beam of pure chaos at the ancient barrier, and for one incredible moment, physics held its breath. Then the wall cracked like glass, opening a gap just wide enough for their ship to squeeze through. "Punch it!" Ji-won shouted. They plunged through the breach as reality twisted around them, emerging into a galaxy that no human eyes had ever seen. Behind them, the wall sealed itself shut, but the impossible had been achieved. Humanity had just kicked down the door to the unknown. The first thing that hit them was the silence. Not the empty silence of space, but something deeper. The absence of the cosmic background noise that every civilization generated. Captain Lee Ji-won stared at the view screen in amazement as the UES Taekwon drifted through a galaxy that defied everything they knew about the universe. Massive ring structures, each one larger than Earth's solar system, floated in perfect formation around ancient stars. Crystal spires stretched between planets like bridges made of light. Entire worlds had been reshaped into geometric perfection, spheres, cubes, and pyramids that pulsed with controlled energy. It was beautiful, but in a way that made Ji-won's skin crawl. "Captain, I'm not detecting any ships," Lieutenant Choi Dae-ho reported from his communications station. "No traffic, no signals, no chatter at all. It's like they don't need to communicate with each other." Dr. Kim Hana was practically glued to her science console, her eyes wide with wonder and concern. "The energy readings are off the charts. These structures are millions of years old, but they're still functioning at peak efficiency. No wear, no decay, no signs of maintenance or repair." Chief Engineer Park Min-ho shook his head as he studied the technical scans. "That's impossible. Nothing stays perfect for that long. Even our best materials break down over time. These beings have technology that makes our stuff look like stone tools." Suddenly the ship's sensors screamed a warning. Something was approaching fast. Not a ship, but pure energy racing toward them through space. The crew braced for impact. But instead of destroying them, the energy simply stopped a few hundred meters away and began to take shape. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," Dae-ho announced, his voice tight with tension. "But it's not coming through our radio. It's going directly into our heads." The view screen flickered and showed something that made everyone on the bridge step back. A being of pure light floated before them, contained within a crystalline shell that looked like living diamond. Its form shifted constantly, sometimes appearing almost human, other times becoming geometric patterns that hurt to look at. When it spoke, the words bypassed their ears entirely and appeared directly in their minds. The voice was ancient, carrying the weight of millions of years of existence. "I am Architect Prime, first among the builders, keeper of the great design. We are the ones who raised the wall that contained your chaotic species." Ji-won felt her crew tense around her. Being called chaotic wasn't exactly a compliment from beings this advanced. But Dr. Hana stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. "We managed to break through your wall," she said boldly. "That should tell you something about what humanity is capable of." The crystalline being pulsed, its light shifting from blue to red and back again. Around them, more architects materialized. From the void, dozens of them, then hundreds, forming a perfect sphere around the Taekwon. Each one was identical in form, but unique in the patterns of light that flowed through their crystal shells. "Your kind represents everything we chose to eliminate from our civilization eons ago," Architect Prime continued. "Chaos, violence, unpredictability, emotion. We achieved perfection by removing these flaws." Captain Ji-won realized they were walking on the edge of a knife. One wrong word could turn these godlike beings against them. But something in the architect's tone made her push back. "And what did that elimination cost you?" she asked quietly. For the first time since appearing, Architect Prime hesitated. The light patterns in its crystalline form flickered uncertainly. Around them, the other architects began to pulse in rhythm, as if her question had triggered something they hadn't felt in millions of years. Park Min-ho was studying his engineering readouts with growing amazement and horror. "Captain, their technology is incredible, but there's something seriously wrong here. Look at these patterns." He transferred his data to the main view screen. What they saw made the entire crew fall silent. Every structure, every energy signature, every technological marvel around them was exactly the same as it had been a million years ago. Not similar, identical down to the quantum level. "There's no innovation, no development, no experimentation," Park continued. "Everything is perfectly static. They've created the same things over and over, for longer than life has existed on Earth." Dr. Hana felt a chill run down her spine as the implications hit her. They've achieved technological perfection, but they've lost the ability to grow. They're stuck in an endless loop of their own making. The architects around them began to flicker more rapidly, their perfect formations becoming slightly less perfect. Architect Prime's form expanded and contracted as if it was having trouble maintaining its shape. "We eliminated war," it said. But now its mental voice carried something that might have been doubt. "We removed suffering. We ended the chaos that plagued lesser civilizations." "But you also ended progress," Ji-won replied gently. "You eliminated the very things that make life worth living." Through the bridge windows, they could see more architect structures in the distance, perfect, beautiful, and completely lifeless. Automated systems maintained them with flawless precision, but there was no creativity, no art, no sign that anyone actually lived here anymore. "We have watched your species through the wall," Architect Prime admitted. "Your wars, your struggles, your constant conflicts. We thought you needed more time to mature to become civilized like us." Engineer Park laughed, but not unkindly. "Civilized? You've turned yourselves into living computers. Where's the joy? Where's the discovery? Where's the fun?" The word fun seemed to hit the architects like a physical blow. Several of them flickered out of existence entirely, while others began changing colors rapidly, as if trying to remember what that concept even meant. "We have perfect order," Architect Prime protested, but its voice was weaker now. "Perfect order is another word for death," Dr. Hana said softly. "Life is messy, it's chaotic, it makes mistakes and learns from them. That's not a flaw, that's the whole point." The truth was becoming clear to everyone on the bridge. The architects hadn't just built the wall to contain younger races, they had built it to protect themselves from the very thing they feared most: change. Dr. Kim Hana's hands moved like lightning across her console as terabytes of architect data flooded her screens. The crystalline beings had granted them access to their historical archives, thinking it would help the humans understand their perfect civilization. But what Hana found in those ancient records made her face go pale with horror. "Captain," she called out, her voice shaking slightly. "You need to see this. The wall wasn't built to protect younger races from advanced technology or to keep us contained until we matured." Captain Lee Ji-won moved to stand behind Hana's station, watching, as star maps from millions of years ago appeared on the display. The galaxy looked completely different back then. Thousands of thriving civilizations, trade routes connecting distant worlds, and signs of life everywhere. "Then what was it for?" Ji-won asked, though something in her gut already knew the answer. "Wouldn't be good." Hana's fingers trembled as she pulled up the tactical display. The current galaxy map appeared alongside the ancient one, and the difference was terrifying. Scattered throughout the architect territory were dark zones, vast, empty regions where entire star systems had gone silent, not destroyed by war or natural disaster, but simply erased. "Look at these readings," Hana whispered. "Entire civilizations that just vanished overnight. Billions of beings, gone without a trace. But they left something behind. Quantum shadows, like echoes of consciousness that got torn away." Chief Engineer Park Min-ho leaned over to study the data, his face growing grim. "These aren't natural phenomena. Something was hunting them, something that feeds on minds." Architect Prime's voice suddenly filled their heads, no longer carrying its previous authority. The crystalline being had been listening to their discovery, and now its form flickered with what could only be described as ancient fear. The Devourers, parasites from the void between galaxies that consume consciousness itself. Lieutenant. Joy Deho spun around in his chair. Wait, you knew about this? You knew there were things out there that eat minds, and you trapped us on the same side of the wall with them. The architect's light patterns shifted to darker hues. We thought the wall would contain them. Your species was expendable. If the Devourers consumed your chaotic minds, perhaps they would be satisfied and leave us in peace. The bridge fell silent as the full horror of the situation sank in. Humanity and every other species in their galaxy had been used as bait, a sacrifice to keep the architects safe in their perfect isolation. You cowards, Park snarled. You built a prison and threw us in with the monsters. But Dr. Hana was still studying the data, and what she found made everything worse. Captain, the quantum resonance from our breach attempt, it's not just a small hole we made. We've destabilized the entire wall structure. It's collapsing. Before anyone could respond, every alarm on the ship began screaming at once. The communications array lit up like a Christmas tree as emergency signals poured in from across the galaxy. Multiple breaches detected along the wall, Deho shouted over the noise. Something's coming through. Hundreds of them. The main view screen switched to long-range sensors, and what they saw made everyone's blood freeze. Reality itself was tearing open in dozens of places along the failing barrier. Through each rip in space-time, something dark and hungry was pouring through. Entities that seemed to absorb light itself, leaving trails of absolute blackness behind them. Devourers, Architect Prime whispered, its voice now carrying pure terror. They have been waiting, feeding on the quantum leakage from the wall for millions of years, growing stronger. The creatures looked like living shadows, but shadows with purpose and terrible intelligence. They moved through space without ships, their forms constantly, shifting between states of matter. Some appeared as massive tentacled nightmares, others as geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. But they all shared one thing, an overwhelming sense of hunger that made the human crew feel sick just looking at them. How many are there? Ji-Won asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Hana's voice was barely a whisper. Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands, and they're all heading for populated systems. The tactical display showed the Devourers spreading out like a plague across both galaxies. Some were racing toward Architect territories, while others were moving toward the weakened wall, preparing to invade the younger galaxy where Earth and billions of other worlds waited defenseless. Captain, Park said quietly, our breach didn't just open a door, we rang the dinner bell. Through the view screen they watched as the first wave of Devourers reached an Architect world. The planet's perfect crystalline cities went dark, one by one, as the creatures fed on the consciousness of every being they found. The Architect's advanced technology was useless against enemies that didn't attack the body, but consumed the mind directly. They're heading for Earth's galaxy too, Daiho reported, his voice tight with fear. At their current speed, they'll reach the outer colonies in less than 72 hours. Ji-Won felt the weight of 2 entire galaxies settling on her shoulders. Every choice led to catastrophe. If they ran home to warn Earth, billions would die while they traveled. If they stayed to fight, they might be able to slow the Devourers down, but it would probably mean sacrificing themselves and their ship, Wiki. Have 2 options, she announced to her crew, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. We can run home and warn Earth about what's coming, or we can stay here and try to fight something that has been consuming civilizations for millions of years. Engineer Park looked up from his station, where he was already running calculations on weapon modifications. His expression was determined, showing the kind of stubborn courage that had carried humanity to the stars. With all due respect, Captain, he said firmly, that's not really a choice at all. We caused this mess by breaking through the wall. Now we need to fix it. Around the bridge, the rest of the crew nodded in agreement. They were scared, terrified, actually, but they were also human, and humans had never been good at running away from problems they had created. In the distance, more sections of the galactic wall crumbled away, releasing fresh waves of hungry darkness into a galaxy that had no idea what was coming for it. The war room aboard the UES Taekwon had never been designed to hold crystalline beings the size of small buildings, but somehow they made it work. Captain Lee Ji-won stood at the center of a holographic battle map, surrounded by dozens of architect commanders whose forms flickered with nervous energy. The ancient beings had ruled the galaxy for millions of years, but now they were asking humans for help. "Your battle strategies are beautiful," Ji-won said, gesturing at the perfect geometric formations displayed on their tactical screens. "Every movement calculated, every angle optimized, every variable accounted for. And that's exactly why you keep losing." Architect Prime's crystalline form pulsed with confusion. "Our mathematics are flawless. Our predictions are accurate to 17 decimal places. How can perfection be a weakness?" Chief Engineer Park Min-ho looked up from where he was elbow-deep in architect technology, trying to jury-rig their weapons with human modifications. "Because the Devourers have been fighting you for millions of years. They know exactly what you're going to do before you do it." Dr. Kim Hana was hunched over her research station, surrounded by brain scans and quantum field readings that would have made Earth's top scientists weep with joy. What she had discovered in the past few hours changed everything they knew about the war. "Captain, I figured out why the Devourers can't seem to get a solid grip on human minds," she announced, excitedly. "Our thoughts are too chaotic. While architect minds think in perfect patterns, human consciousness is like a storm of random ideas, emotions and memories all happening at once." She pulled up a comparison on the main display. Architect thought patterns looked like beautiful, crystalline structures, ordered, predictable and easy to map. Human brain activity looked like a tornado made of lightning. "When a devourer tries to consume a human mind, it's like trying to drink from a fire hose during an earthquake," Hana continued. "Our mental chaos acts like armor." Lieutenant Choi Dae-ho was monitoring communications from across the galaxy, coordinating with refugee fleets and resistance groups. "Captain, the Zephyrian Defense Fleet just reported something interesting. The 3 human merchant ships in their convoy survived a devourer attack, while every other vessel was consumed." This gave Ji-won an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. Knowing humanity's track record, it was probably both. "What if we weaponize our chaos?" she asked the assembled architects. "Instead of fighting the Devourers with perfect order, we hit them with controlled randomness." Park grinned as he connected the final components of his latest invention. "I've been working on exactly that. Instead of programming our weapons for perfect accuracy, I've introduced calculated unpredictability, random firing patterns, unexpected maneuvers, strategies that change every few seconds." The architects looked horrified at the concept. "But that would reduce efficiency by 37%, protested one commander. "Exactly," Ji-won replied. "The Devourers expect you to be efficient. They've never fought an enemy that deliberately wastes shots, makes mistakes, or does things that don't make logical sense." The first test came sooner than expected. A pack of Devourers had cornered an architect research station, and the perfect defensive grid was about to fail. Ji-won took personal command of a mixed human architect squadron, with the Taekwon leading the charge. "All ships, ignore your targeting computers," she ordered. "Fire at random intervals. Change course every 30 seconds for no reason. Make this look like the messiest space battle in galactic history." What followed was a disaster by any military standard, and a complete victory by human standards. Ships broke formation just to reform in different patterns. Weapons fired at empty space, then suddenly concentrated on single targets. The entire battle looked like it was being fought by drunk amateurs. The Devourers, creatures that had spent eons learning to predict and counter perfect military tactics, had no idea how to respond. They kept trying to anticipate the human fleet's next move, but there was no pattern to anticipate. When they adapted to counter one strategy, the humans had already switched to something completely different. "Direct hit on the lead Devourer," Choi reported with excitement. "It's actually retreating." Through the chaos, they watched something unprecedented, a Devourer creature that looked confused. Its shadowy form kept shifting, trying different approaches, but every time it thought it had figured out the human pattern, they changed again. They're not used to enemies who turn their own disadvantages into weapons, Dr. Hana observed as she watched the battle unfold. We're teaching million-year-old predators that sometimes the best strategy is to have no strategy at all. Word of V. The victory spread quickly through both galaxies. Suddenly, every species that had been hiding from the Devourers wanted to learn human tactics. The Taekwon became an unlikely command ship, with Captain Jiwon running what amounted to a military academy for ancient civilizations. The lessons were simple but revolutionary. Embrace mistakes, plan for failure, and never do the same thing twice. Where architect commanders had spent centuries perfecting single battle plans, humans taught them to prepare 17 different strategies and pick one at random. "This is madness," complained an architect general after his first lesson in controlled chaos. "Exactly," Park replied cheerfully as he handed over weapons that had been deliberately made less accurate. "Madness they can't predict or counter." But even as their combined forces began winning battles across the galaxy, everyone knew the real test was still coming. The galactic wall was collapsing faster now, and intelligence reports suggested the Devourers were massing for one final assault. Not on individual worlds, but on the heart of both galaxies simultaneously. In her private quarters, Jiwon stared out at the stars and wondered if human chaos would be enough to save two entire galaxies. They had proven that unpredictability could win battles, but the war was far from over. The biggest test of humanity's refusal to accept defeat was still ahead. Outside her window, mixed fleets of human and architect ships practiced maneuvers. That would have horrified military academies across the galaxy. But they were learning, adapting, and most importantly, they were fighting back against creatures that had ruled through fear for millions of years. The final battle was coming, and humanity was about to show the galaxy what controlled chaos could really accomplish. The moment the galactic wall completely collapsed, space itself seemed to scream. Captain Lee Jiwon watched from the bridge of the UES Taekwon as reality tore open in 1,000 places, releasing waves of devourers that had been building up pressure for millions of years. The creatures poured through like a black tide, their forms so dark they seemed to absorb the light from nearby stars. "Fleet status report," Jiwon called out, trying to keep her voice steady as she watched the largest space battle in galactic history unfold around them. Lieutenant Choi Daeho's hands flew across his communications console. 2,000 ships, from 60 different species, all holding position. The architects have committed their entire war fleet, and even the Kraxan Empire sent their dreadnoughts. It was an incredible sight. Crystalline architect vessels that looked like floating cathedrals, human ships bristling with improvised weapons, alien craft of every conceivable design, all united against an enemy that threatened to consume every thinking being in two galaxies. But even this massive fleet looked tiny compared to what they faced. The Devourers weren't just individual creatures anymore. They had merged into something far worse. At the center of their swarm was a consciousness so vast it defied comprehension, a living black hole of hunger that had been feeding in the void between galaxies for eons. "Captain," Dr. Kim Hana called from her science station, her voice tight with urgency. "I'm reading the primary consciousness. It's the size of a small moon, and growing larger by the minute. Every mind it consumes makes it stronger." Chief Engineer Park Min-ho was working frantically at his station, pushing the ship's systems beyond every safety limit they had. "The modified quantum breach drive is ready, but Captain, if we use it as a weapon instead of for travel, there's no guarantee we'll survive the feedback." Jiwon looked around her bridge one last time. These people had become more than her crew. They were her family. They had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission, because sometimes the only way to save everything you love is to risk losing it all. "All ships, this is Captain Lee Jiwon," she broadcast across the entire fleet. "Today we prove that some things are worth any sacrifice. Today we show the universe that freedom is worth fighting for, no matter the cost." The response was immediate. Ships from dozens of species acknowledged her transmission, their crews ready to follow a human captain into the heart of darkness itself. It was a moment that would be remembered for as long as consciousness existed in the galaxy. The plan was pure human madness disguised as strategy. Instead of trying to fight the devourer consciousness with conventional weapons, they would ram the Taekwon directly into its core and detonate the quantum breach drive from the inside. The drive that had broken through the galactic wall would become the ultimate weapon of chaos. Beginning our attack run, Park announced as he engaged the engines at maximum power. The ship leaped forward like a missile, diving straight toward the writhing mass of the primary consciousness. Around them, the combined fleet engaged the smaller devourers, buying time for the Taekwon to reach its target. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes as crews gave their lives to protect the mission. The space battle was beautiful and terrible, with thousands of vessels dancing through clouds of exotic energy and debris. As they closed on the consciousness, reality began to warp around them. The creature was so massive that its mere presence bent space-time into impossible shapes. Stars appeared and disappeared, gravity shifted in random directions, and the laws of physics became more like gentle suggestions. "It's trying to consume our minds," Hannah shouted over the alarms. "I can feel it probing our thoughts." But where the devourer expected to find the ordered consciousness of architects or other advanced species, it found something completely different. Human minds were a storm of contradictions, love and hate, hope and despair, logic and intuition all swirling together in beautiful chaos. The creature recoiled in confusion. For millions of years, it had fed on perfectly organized thoughts, but human consciousness was like trying to drink lightning. Every time it tried to grasp one thought, 3 others would spin away in unexpected directions. "It can't process us," Jiwon realized. "Our chaos is like poison to something that feeds on order." They plunged deeper into the consciousness, the ship's hull groaning under pressures that shouldn't exist. Through the view screen, they could see the creature's internal structure, vast networks of consumed minds, all perfectly organized and controlled. "Drive is at maximum power," Park announced. "Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now." Jiwon looked at her crew one last time. "It's been an honor serving with all of you." Fire. The quantum breach drive didn't fire outward this time. It fired inward, directly into the heart of the devourer consciousness. Instead of breaking through barriers, it introduced pure unpredictability into a system that depended on perfect order. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The creature's consumption matrix, designed to process organized thoughts, couldn't handle the chaotic energy patterns from the drive. Like a computer virus spreading through a network, the chaos began corrupting everything the consciousness had consumed over millions of years. The devourer's scream echoed across both galaxies as it began to collapse in on itself. Minds that had been perfectly organized for eons suddenly remembered what it felt like to dream, to hope, to create. The creature found itself drowning in the very thing it had tried to eliminate, the beautiful unpredictability of life. When the explosion cleared, the Taekwon was gone, but so was the primary consciousness. Across the galaxy, smaller devourers began fleeing back to the void, no longer coordinated by their central intelligence. The victory came at a terrible cost, but it opened up possibilities that no one had imagined. With the wall gone and the devourer threat ended, both galaxies could finally interact freely. Trade routes opened between ancient architect worlds and young human colonies. Species that had never met began sharing knowledge and culture. 3 years later, Admiral Lee Jiwon stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, the new diplomatic center built at the exact spot where the Galactic Wall had once stood. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she watched ships from 100 different worlds docking and departing, carrying goods, ideas, and dreams between the galaxies. The most amazing sight was the school ships, massive vessels where human children learned alongside young architects, their laughter echoing through corridors that had once seemed impossible. The architects, forever changed by their contact with humanity, were rediscovering what it meant to grow and change. "Admiral," her aide announced, "the Council is ready for your speech." Jiwon smiled as she walked toward the assembly hall where representatives from both galaxies waited. As she passed a group of human and architect children playing together, she heard one of them ask, "What's beyond the next galaxy?" That question filled her with hope. Humanity's greatest journey wasn't behind them, it was just beginning. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and now they had friends to explore it with. The galaxy was no longer divided by walls or fear, but united by the very chaos and unpredictability that made life worth living. And somewhere out there, new adventures were waiting for anyone brave enough to seek them. The end.